Good morning. Hope everybody is well. Just going to do that thing where I fail miserably to get people involved. Just going to add some randoms and see who's around. I think that'll probably do. Okie doke. So, got a few people tagged to say I'm online. Good morning. How is everybody? I hope you're all well. Welcome to Morning Coffee. I'm going to brew some coffee this morning, have a bit of a talk about it, have a chat, and just we can get on with our day after that. So, thank you everybody who tuned in over the weekend to make Irish coffees and cold brews with me. I had a great time, really enjoyed it. I hope you did as well. Today, I'm going to do something that someone requested last week, and I'm going to show you my technique for making a clever dripper. Clever dripper is a really simple, straightforward way of making your coffee at home. And I think it is one of the lowest margin of error ways to produce coffee that you can possibly use. So let me spin this round. What you'll see is I've already got my clever dripper set up, which is a filter paper in there which has been pre-wet with warm water. What that does is it just opens the pores up, means the coffee can soak through nice and well. I've weighed out 30 grams of my chosen pre-ground coffee, and I'm using pre-ground today rather than grinding it myself. I know that a lot of people will buy pre-ground coffee, may not have grinders themselves, so I thought we'd go with this as an easier route. I've got hot water in my bottle, and I've got my catching jug ready to go on the side there. So I think we'll get straight into it and I'll show you what we do. So, first things first, we've prepped the filter paper. That's been warmed, it's been opened up and everything's ready to go on that. Next, we put our coffee in. For those of you unfamiliar with gravity, that's how that works. Next, what I want to do is inside the paper, I want to make a little well. So I'm using my trusty bamboo and I'm making a little well in the middle of all of that. Now, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. I choose to because I like to get a nice even spread of coffee around the bed. Because we don't get the choice of grinding this coffee ourselves, we've got to take whatever grind size has been sent by the roaster. In this case, it's a kind of a medium to fine grind, which would work for a V60 or a filter machine, but it's a little bit finer than I'd really want it for a clever dripper. For your clever dripper, you want to be a little bit coarser than this, but not quite up to cafetiere level. That's because you've got an immersion brew here, but you are also dripping it through. The way we're going to control this is by shortening the brew time slightly. So, on my scales, I've got a little clock. Let me spin that for you. You see? So on the left there, I can start the timer. On the right there, I tear the weight. What I'm going to do, I'm going to take the lid off my bottle and get a little bit of hot water in there to start things off. So let's just spin that again. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put in some water, just enough to get everything kind of covered. There was 30 grams of coffee in there. I'm going to get to about 90 grams of water. I've just gone slightly over. And I'm going to start my clock. Now I'm going to just slightly agitate that to make sure all of my grinds are nice and wet. There we go. And then I'm going to top up. I would usually leave it a little bit longer than this for bloom, but don't need to in this case. I'm just going to top that up till we get to about 500 with the water. Now this might look a little scary because it looks like it's going to fill this up quite quickly, but trust me, the top half of this gets quite big. Would you look at that, I didn't get enough water. Bear with me a second, folks, I'm just going to get some more. My apologies for shattering the illusion of professionalism. Right, up to 500 grams. Lid on clever dripper, which keeps the temperature in, keeps the water about the right temperature. So here we go. Lid's on, it's brewing. We're going to wait until it gets to about 2.5 minutes and then we'll pour it out into the receiver. So let me talk to you about Sumatran coffee. It is one of those extraordinary origins. It's often very badly represented, particularly in specialty coffee. But if I told you that two of my favourite coffees I've had in the last 12 months have been from this region, and I'll tell you why, you can start to get a little bit more excited about Sumatran coffee. It can be challenging to find the really, really good Sumatras. A lot of the time you get green traders, roasters, buyers who just don't quite get it right, and it's not as good as you want it to be. But the coffees I've had this year have been absolutely extraordinary. So in Sumatra, there's a traditional processing method that is still used, which is very different to everything else everywhere around the world. It's called the Wet Hulled process, or Giling Bashar, as it is in its local language. Apologies if that pronunciation wasn't quite on the money there. Basically, this Wet Hulled process, if you think about picking coffee, you are taking something off a tree that's a little bit bigger than a grape with some seeds inside. What you're trying to do is get rid of that fruit around those seeds. Now, you can do that in a number of ways. You can peel it, you can just sit it out in the sun until it dries and breaks off, or there's a number of other little ways you can get around it. But if you think about peeling your coffee, and you've got like an apricot stone or a nectarine stone, and you've got that kind of stringy, fleshy bit around there that just won't go, that's the bit you need to get rid of. A lot of people will ferment their coffee to try and get rid of this, and that tends to result in nice, bright, washed coffees. But in Sumatra, what they tend to do is they just let it dry a little bit and then just get rid of the whole thing. There's a last protective layer around the seed called parchment, and this is what protects coffee whilst it's at origin waiting to be exported. What we tend to find in Sumatra, they will pick the cherry, they'll give it a quick hand pulp, they'll run it through a machine, a little bit like a mangle, which splits the fruit away from the beans, and what that does is it gives you just the beans left. Then they'll start drying those beans, and eventually what will happen, you'll get down to about 35% moisture, and then they'll run it through another milling machine, which gets rid of the outside protective layer and leaves it quite wet, but completely cleared of all the stuff. You tend to get lower acidity because of this. You get fuller body, and you can get some slightly wacky, herbal, spicy flavours as well. And that's one of the reasons why Sumatran coffee is so popular. If you think about the good old-fashioned Italian espresso blends, they tend to be 80-20. So there's 20% Robusta in there and 80% Arabica. That Robusta gives you body, gives you structure, gives you backbone, and it gives you that full body and a little bit of bitterness in there, but low acidity. If you look at one of the most successful roasters of the 20th century, Starbucks, one of their signatures in their espresso recipe is this coffee. It is this Wet Hulled Sumatra. That fulfills the same function in that blend as the Robusta does in the old Italian blends. It's got body, it's got low acidity, and it gives that kind of backbone and that structure. So that is why it's such a popular coffee commercially. But the coffees I've had recently have been utterly exquisite. You don't tend to get the really vibrant, bright, lemony acidity that you do from, say, Colombia. Morning, Ivy! Ivy wants me to get closed in. She doesn't want me to be out in the outside world, so my door's now been closed by my 3-year-old. I'm now locked in. Yes, so you don't tend to get the shimmering kind of bright lemon acidity as you would do from, say, Colombia or Ethiopia. What you get instead is a much more complex, nuanced acidity. You'll get a bit of malic, a bit of lactic, a little bit of phosphoric. It's a really beautiful, complex nuance. There's plenty of fruit flavour in there as well. You often get kind of tropical fruit, mango, passion fruit, pineapple, but also something that is pretty much unique to this area, and I've not had it anywhere else, and that is this absolutely delicious perfumed tobacco leaf kind of flavour. And I've never smoked, so it's difficult for me to exactly pin down what it is, but what it reminds me of is that kind of clan pipe tobacco, that very aromatic, sweet pipe tobacco that people's grandfathers used to smoke. And that, to me, is what these really extraordinary Sumatras remind me of. And I think for me, because I have been so privileged to have come across so many really beautiful coffees over my time, you can sometimes get a bit fatigued of bright, sweet, lemony, floral, Earl Grey Yirgachefs and sweet damson plum Panamas. And for me, this extraordinary Sumatra has been something I hadn't had recently. And so having this extraordinary Sumatra really, really kind of woke me up and made me think, wow, there's utterly beautiful coffee out there that I'm just not tasting. So I've had a couple this year that have been absolutely stunning. I'm really looking forward to being able to try and source one of those coffees and trying to release it at some point in the future, because they are just delicious. Anyway, that's finished dripping through now. These tend to be very popular coffees amongst consumers because a lot of consumers aren't mad keen on acidity. They're not expecting acidity. If you're upgrading from instant coffee, it's quite often the case that acidity isn't really what you're looking for. What you're looking for is something that is coffee, maybe a little bit bitter, but with low acidity and a full body, and that's what you would define as being really good coffee. So an awful lot of consumers, when they first step into making filter coffee, making specialty coffee, will instantly default towards filter coffees like this, Sumatra, as being their go-to and their kind of top choice. Right, back in the little red cup. Not because I'm specifically promoting Mr. Ridley, but just because it happens to be at hand. I'm going to have a taste. Cheers. Yeah, that's doing exactly what it says on the tin. Very low acidity. You've got a real full body, very heavy in the mouth, a bit like chewing a duvet. And it has sweetness. There is that complexity and nuance of flavour in there. So I'm getting a little bit of malic acidity. There is some citric acidity as well, but not overpowering. But it's multi-layered acidity that I'm tasting, as well as that sweetness that you get from good quality Arabica. And then you're starting to get those slightly herbal flavours coming through as well. The pipe tobacco element isn't as prominent in this particular coffee as in some, but it is quite tasty. The roast is ever so slightly darker, so it pushes that body a bit further and it drops the acidity further still. So this is a really accessible coffee to new coffee drinkers who are drinking filter coffee at home for the first time. Anyway, thank you for joining me this morning. I hope everybody is well, happy and healthy. Today's my first day of full tilt attempted childcare. So me and Ivy have been reading books this morning. We've gone through the classics, we've gone through Wonky Donkey, we've gone through Archie Woodnot's Wonder Web by Sonia Tuffy, and we've gone through some of the Julia Donald. So we've ticked off all of the classics. I'm pretty sure you can get those all on Amazon still if you are looking for children's books, and I can't recommend Archie Woodnot's Wonder Web enough. Anyway, hope you all have a wonderful day today. Enjoy the sunshine, look at it through the windows, don't go out, and don't forget, everything is awesome!